Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Saturday, July 25th, 2026, and you're listening to Alex's News. The weather in Riverside will be quite warm today, so please prioritize your safety. We're looking at a high of 98.7 degrees and a low of 70.4 degrees. If you are heading out to enjoy your Saturday, please remember to stay hydrated and find shade whenever possible. Coming up on today's program, we will examine the reasons behind the concerning rise in measles cases being reported across the United States. We will also take a close look at the significant obstacles California is facing in its efforts to replant forests that have been devastated by wildfires. Additionally, we will bring you other minor stories you need to know. All this and much more coming up on Alex's News. Stay tuned. Good morning. This year, the country's dealing with a measles surge unlike anything we've seen in decades. Our health reporter Ethan is here to explain. Ethan, just how bad is it right now?
It's remarkable, Grace. As of today, the CDC has confirmed 2,318 measles cases in just the first 7 months of 2026. According to NBC News, Fox 13 News, and WJAC-TV, that already tops the entire total for last year. All of 2025 saw 2,289 cases, so we've passed a full year's count in about half the time. Officials say these are levels the U.S. hasn't seen in 35 years.
35 years. So what makes measles spread this fast?
Measles is essentially the most infectious virus we know of. Dr. Michael Tang, a virologist with USF Health in Tampa, told Fox 13 News that a single infected person can infect between 12 and 18 others. Compare that to the flu, where one person might infect 1 or 2 people. The virus lingers in the air, so you don't even need direct contact. That's why a small gap in immunity can blow up into a large outbreak.
And I understand doctors see measles as a kind of warning sign?
Exactly, and this is the part people miss. Dr. Richard Besser, president of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, described measles as the, quote, canary in the coal mine, end quote, via NBC News. His point is that because measles spreads so easily, it's the first disease to reappear when vaccination rates slip. If measles is coming back, it means communities are now vulnerable to other preventable diseases too. He specifically mentioned meningitis, whooping cough, and chickenpox.
Let's talk about who's getting sick. Is it mostly people who skipped the vaccine?
Overwhelmingly, yes. The CDC reports that 93% of those infected are unvaccinated. The problem is we've fallen below the 95% vaccination threshold needed to maintain what's called herd immunity. Data from 2025 showed only 92.5% of children received the measles vaccine. Experts blame a mix of growing anti-vaccine sentiment, limited healthcare access, and gaps in primary care education.
Where did this whole wave actually start?
It's been building since January 2025, and it began with a major outbreak in West Texas. NBC News reports that the Texas outbreak reached 762 cases. Tragically, it caused the first U.S. measles deaths in over a decade, including 2 young girls who had no known health problems. That was a wake-up moment, because for years, measles was something people thought of as harmless or gone entirely.
And it clearly didn't stay in Texas. Where else are we seeing big clusters?
Several states, and some numbers are staggering. In South Carolina, a massive outbreak in the upstate region began last fall and accelerated after Christmas, eventually infecting 997 people. Utah has had over 700 total infections, 514 of them this year, after an outbreak that started in June 2025 near the Arizona border and spread all the way to Salt Lake City. So this isn't one isolated hotspot, it's really moving across the map.
What about here in the Southeast? How's Florida doing?
Florida has reported 141 infections, which Fox 13 News says ranks the state 5th highest nationwide. 16 of those cases are right in the Tampa Bay area. That may sound modest next to South Carolina, but remember how fast this virus moves. A handful of cases can multiply quickly if vaccination rates are low in a given community. So public health folks there are watching it very closely.
And I know Pennsylvania has been in the headlines too. What's happening there?
Pennsylvania has reported 132 cases, and 27 of those were diagnosed in just the past week. WJAC-TV notes that Lancaster County is the hardest hit, with 83 cases. Other confirmed cases have shown up in Snyder, Indiana, and Mifflin counties. That recent jump of 27 in a single week tells you the outbreak there is still very active, not winding down.
Are there other states just now entering the picture?
There are. New outbreaks have emerged in Wyoming, Delaware, and Arizona. Virginia reported 177 cases starting in May, though the good news is those numbers have plateaued since July 4th. New Jersey has reported just one confirmed case in 2026, but that came after several public health alerts earlier in the year. So the pattern is really uneven, with some states surging while others manage to hold steady.
We often think of measles as a childhood illness. Is that still true here?
Children and teenagers do face the highest risk, making up nearly 70% of cases. But adults are being hit harder than many people expect. In Pennsylvania, only 39% of cases occurred in people under 18. Dr. Evan Shirey of Penn State Health told Fox 13 News that the virus is crossing all socioeconomic backgrounds and age groups. So this isn't confined to one community or one age bracket.
For someone who's never seen measles, what does it actually feel like?
Clinicians are describing it as, quote, the flu on steroids, end quote. Patients get very high fevers. We're talking 104 to 105 degrees, along with runny noses and a distinctive rash. Adults in particular have suffered severe complications, including vomiting, diarrhea, and dehydration. So this is not a mild inconvenience. It can put people in the hospital, and in the worst cases, as we saw in Texas, it can be fatal.
Let's turn to the response. How are federal officials handling this?
That's been a real point of contention. NBC News reports the federal response has been minimal and notes the CDC has lacked a permanent director for most of President Donald Trump's second term. HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's a known vaccine skeptic, has distanced himself from the outbreaks. Dr. Adam Ratner of the American Academy of Pediatrics argues the crisis would be less severe if the CDC and local health departments were better funded and staffed.
And at the state level, especially in Florida, what's the stance there?
In Florida, State Surgeon General Dr. Joseph Ladapo has opposed vaccine mandates. He argues individuals should make healthcare decisions without coercion, though he does acknowledge the measles vaccine is effective. Fox 13 News notes that Governor Ron DeSantis and Dr. Ladapo previously vowed to end all vaccine mandates. Those efforts actually failed in the 2026 legislative session, so the mandates remain in place for now.
Big picture, could this cost the U.S. a status it's held for years?
It could, and that's what worries public health leaders most. The United States officially declared measles eradicated in 2000, and we've maintained that for over 2 decades. But this surge directly threatens that designation. The Pan American Health Organization is expected to decide in November, about 4 months from now, whether the U.S. will officially lose its eliminated status. Losing it would be a symbolic and practical setback after 26 years.
So what's the bottom line for our listeners this morning?
The simplest takeaway is that measles is preventable, and the vaccine remains highly effective. Experts say getting communities back above that 95% threshold is the key to stopping the spread. Because measles is the canary in the coal mine, protecting against it also helps guard against those other diseases Dr. Besser mentioned. If people check their vaccination status now, that's the single most powerful step they can take.
Really helpful context this morning. Ethan, thanks so much for breaking it down.
Happy to, Grace. We'll keep tracking those numbers and that November decision.
Welcome back. Our next story looks at a slow-moving crisis unfolding across California's forests. Wildfires are destroying trees faster than the state can replant them. Here to explain is our reporter, Chloe. Chloe, how serious is this?
It's genuinely alarming, Grace. According to reporting from CalMatters, Patch, and the New York Times, California is at risk of a permanent ecological shift. That means iconic forest landscapes could be converted into scrub and brush. A working draft of a new state reforestation strategy shows that over the last 25 years, high-severity wildfires burned 2.3 million acres so completely that natural regrowth is unlikely.
2.3 million acres. So these forests may never come back on their own?
That's exactly the fear. Once a fire burns that hot and that wide, there's no seed source left nearby to naturally reseed the land. One analysis cited by these outlets warns that if current trends persist, half of California's forest area could be gone by 2071. And that's not just about scenery. These forests provide carbon storage, air purification, water supply protection, and critical wildlife habitat.
What's driving this? Is it purely climate change?
It's a combination, actually. Climate change is a huge factor, but so is over a century of aggressive fire suppression. For decades, we put out nearly every fire, which allowed forests to grow dense and choked with fuel. So when fires do break out now, they burn hotter and more destructively. That double legacy is what's pushing these landscapes past the point of recovery.
You'd think we could just plant new trees. Why isn't that happening faster?
It comes down to infrastructure and resources, and the bottlenecks are surprising. Start with the seed bank. CAL FIRE's Lewis Amaran Reforestation Center in Davis is the state's main seed bank. But CalMatters and Patch report it operates out of a windowless warehouse. It's storing 42,000 pounds of seeds in cardboard boxes, and some of those seeds are over 50 years old.
Cardboard boxes? That doesn't sound like nearly enough capacity.
It isn't. CAL FIRE estimates that a 300% increase in seed bank capacity would be needed just to replant even a quarter of the state's privately owned forest lands. And that's before you even get the seeds into the ground. Finding the right seeds in the first place is described as a major choke point, because different elevations and regions need different genetic stock.
So how are they trying to gather more seeds?
There are some creative efforts underway. The nonprofit American Forests, with support from CAL FIRE and the Forest Service, runs a program called Cone Camp. It trains people to collect pine cones, which is harder than it sounds. And a CAL FIRE employee named Stuart McMorrow developed a tree climbing program so crews can pluck ripe cones right from the treetops, where the best seeds often are.
Even with the seeds in hand, I imagine replanting takes time.
A lot of time, actually. Crews first have to clear out the dead and dying trees. That's for safety, and to reduce the risk of what they call reburns, where leftover fuel catches fire again. Once the land is finally cleared, it can take another 1 to 2 years just to source the seeds and grow the seedlings before any planting can even begin.
Now, a big share of California's forests are federal land, right? How does Washington factor in?
It's absolutely pivotal, Grace. Federal land accounts for more than half of California's forests, and the majority of the land that needs replanting. But CalMatters and Patch highlight a steep decline in the workforce. Non-fire staff managing National Forest System lands dropped by 39% between 1998 and 2015. And more recently, the Trump administration significantly cut the Forest Service, resulting in a 20% staff loss last year.
That's a major workforce reduction. Has there been any progress on the funding side?
There has been some. The Biden administration and Congress unblocked money for a reforestation trust fund back in 2021, an effort championed by American Forests. That led to a nationwide replanting of 285,000 acres in a single year, which was the highest in over a quarter century. But even with that milestone, the gap remains enormous compared to what's burning.
How big is that gap, really, on the federal lands here in California?
The numbers are sobering. Research by Hugh Safford found that between 2016 and 2023, the U.S. Forest Service replanted only 1.2% of its California lands stripped bare by wildfire. And that figure already excludes wilderness areas and forests expected to regrow on their own. So even accounting for places that recover naturally, the replanting effort is barely making a dent.
So what's the state's actual plan to turn this around?
The USDA California Climate Hub is developing a reforestation strategy, working alongside the Governor's Wildfire and Forest Resilience Task Force, American Forests, and other agencies. The draft plan recommends expanding the supply of workers, seedlings, and seeds, and streamlining the planning process. It also suggests prioritizing projects based on human safety and water supply.
Are they rethinking how densely they plant, too?
Yes, and that's a smart shift. The plan calls for using lower planting densities and more natural spacing. The idea is to avoid packing trees so tightly that you create excessive fuel for the next high-severity fire. It's a lesson learned from that century of suppression we talked about earlier. You want a resilient forest, not a dense one waiting to burn.
It sounds promising. But is the money actually there to do all this?
That's the catch, Grace. The draft strategy currently has no dedicated funding at all, and the costs are steep, reaching up to $6,400 per acre. To hit the target of replanting 280,000 acres per year by 2030, California would need to scale up its efforts by 35% every single year. That's a very steep climb without a funding source.
What about that Davis Reforestation Center? Is it getting upgraded?
There's a start, but it's modest. The state budget includes roughly $1.2 million for preliminary planning to upgrade the Davis Center. The problem is the total cost of that upgrade is estimated at $26.2 million. So the current allocation covers early planning only, nowhere near the full price tag for the facility that anchors the whole seed operation.
Is there any larger pot of money that could help?
There is one. The Proposition 4 Climate Bond provided $1.5 billion for forest and wildfire resilience. But state leaders are spending those funds quickly, so it's not a long-term guarantee. And there's a new worry on the horizon. CalMatters and Patch report that a vote this past May by California's climate regulators to overhaul a climate program could potentially eliminate or reduce up to $200 million a year in funding for wildfire resilience, including reforestation grants.
So funding that exists today might actually shrink. When you step back, how far behind are we?
The disparity is stark. Since 2020, land managers have replanted roughly 254,000 acres of severely burned forest. That's only about 16% of the area that was stripped of cover. And on federal lands outside wilderness areas, that recovery rate drops even further, down to just 8%. So for every acre we replant, several more are left bare.
That really puts the scale in perspective. Chloe, is there any reason for optimism here?
There is, and it lives in these grassroots efforts. Programs like Cone Camp and Stuart McMorrow's tree climbing work show people are innovating with limited resources. That record 285,000 acres replanted nationally proves the system can scale up when the money and will align. The strategy exists, the science is clear. The open question, Grace, is whether California can fund it before that 2071 tipping point arrives.
A sobering but important story. Chloe, thanks so much for breaking it all down for us this morning.
Happy to, Grace. It's a story we'll be watching closely.
That's all for this hour. Stay with us. Here are some other headlines. Turning to the global economy, it looks like things are getting a bit taxing as Donald Trump imposes a new round of global tariffs. These new duties are linked to claims of foreign forced labor, and the move is already causing some serious friction with major trading partners. Meanwhile, China is playing a game of tit for tat, retaliating against European Union sanctions with new export controls. Talk about a trade war that is really heating up. In a tragic turn of events, a prosecutor investigating United States boat strikes and claims of torture was murdered in Ecuador. A truly devastating blow to the pursuit of justice. Crossing the Atlantic, Europe is feeling the burn. Over 200,000 people have been evacuated in France and Spain as wildfires, fueled by climate change-driven heat waves, tear through the landscape. In France, the situation is truly alarming. 40,000 people were evacuated in the Gironde department, including a total evacuation of the Cap Ferret Peninsula, where over 60,000 people fled, some making a splash by escaping by boat. Interior Minister Laurent Nunez has identified the fire in Samos as the largest this season, while another 23,000 people were evacuated in the Landes department. Spain is also in the hot seat, with the government declaring a national emergency in the Madrid region and Avila province. About 40,000 people there were evacuated or confined, including 19,000 from mountain towns west of the capital. In Madrid, 2 fires converged despite the efforts of 10 aircraft and over 2,000 personnel. Officials say the blaze is at its peak and simply beyond the capacity of firefighters to contain, with a third fire in Avila potentially merging into one giant inferno. Thankfully, no deaths have been reported, but 27 French firefighters have been injured, with 6 hospitalized. The numbers don't lie, as the European Forest Fire Information System shows more land has burnt this year than the annual average. Experts say June's heat domes would have been virtually impossible without a human-driven climate crisis. President Emmanuel Macron has requested help from neighboring countries, and France will be receiving EU reinforcements to help put out the flames. Finally, we move to the Middle East, where tensions are boiling over. Yemen's Houthi rebels have claimed missile and drone strikes on 2 Saudi oil tankers in the Red Sea. This has sent oil prices on a rocket ship, with Brent crude settling above $100 a barrel for the first time since May, rising more than 6%. President Trump has promised major military punishment, weighing a massive attack on Iran that he claims will be bigger than ever before. He also noted that any damage to ships or cargo would be paid for using frozen Iranian funds. Additionally, the region remains a powder keg as more than 4,200 right-wing Israeli activists stormed the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in occupied East Jerusalem. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with Claude Opus 4.8, Gemini Pro 3.1, Gemini Flash 3, and Google Cloud Text-to-Speech. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.